Welcome to a journey into the dark and disturbing world of hitchhiking horror stories. The open road, often a symbol of freedom and adventure, can quickly transform into a desolate highway of fear and uncertainty. These are not just tales spun for entertainment, but true accounts that will send shivers down your spine. Stories whispered in hushed tones, accounts of encounters that left those who lived to tell the tale forever scarred. Our first story takes us to the desolate highways of Texas, where a young woman named Sarah found herself stranded one hot summer night. Her car had sputtered its last breath miles back, leaving her with nothing but the clothes on her back and a growing sense of dread. The sun was a dying ember on the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the asphalt. Just as despair threatened to engulf her, a beat-up pickup truck rattled to a stop beside her. A man, weathered by time and shrouded in shadows, peered out from the driver's seat. He offered her a ride, his voice a gravelly rumble that seemed to echo the desolate landscape. Sarah, desperate for any escape from her predicament, hesitated only for a moment before accepting his offer. As she slid into the worn leather seat, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The stranger said little, his eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror, a nervous habit that did little to calm Sarah's nerves. The silence in the truck was heavy, punctuated only by the rumble of the engine and the whine of the wind whipping through the open windows. Miles melted away, each one taking them further into the heart of darkness. The stranger spoke, breaking the silence with a voice that seemed to crackle with an unnatural energy. He spoke of things that sent chills down Sarah's spine, tales of misfortune and darkness that seemed to seep into the very air of the truck. He told her of a place not far from their route, a place where shadows danced and whispers taunted the living. His words painted vivid pictures in Sarah's mind, images that were both terrifying and strangely alluring. As he spoke, Sarah noticed a strange glint in his eyes, a flicker of something ancient and hungry. It was then that she knew she had made a terrible mistake. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a captive bird, her breath catching in her throat. She wanted to scream, to demand he let her out of the truck, but her voice seemed trapped in her throat. The stranger's gaze met hers, a knowing smile playing on his lips, as if he could read her every terrified thought. He reached into his jacket, his hand disappearing into the shadows, and Sarah was certain this was the moment her nightmare would become reality. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a worn, leather-bound book. Its pages were filled with strange symbols and diagrams that seemed to writhe and shift before her eyes. He held it out to her, his smile widening, and began to speak in a language she didn't understand but felt deep in her bones. Sarah, her body trembling with fear, knew she had to escape. As the truck hit a bump in the road, Sarah fumbled for the door handle, threw it open, and leaped out into the darkness. Our next story takes us to the winding roads of the Pacific Coast Highway, where a seasoned truck driver named Jack encountered a hitchhiker who would leave an unforgettable mark on his life. Jack, a man who had seen it all in his years on the road, was making his usual haul, the rhythmic hum of his engine, a familiar lullaby. The sun was beginning its descent, casting the rugged coastline in a warm golden glow. It was then that he spotted her, a lone figure standing by the side of the road, her thumb extended in the universal sign of a hitchhiker. She was young, barely out of her teens, with long flowing hair and a backpack slung over one shoulder. Something about her demeanor, a quiet sadness in her eyes, tugged at Jack's heartstrings. He pulled over, his code of the road dictating that you never leave a soul stranded, especially not on a night like this. The young woman slid into the passenger seat, her face etched with relief. She introduced herself as Maggie, her voice a soft melody that belied the sadness in her eyes. She told Jack she was heading north, trying to outrun a past that haunted her. Jack, a man of few words, listened intently, his silence offering a comforting presence. As they drove, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of purple and orange. The highway stretched before them, a ribbon of asphalt winding its way through the rugged landscape. Maggie shared snippets of her life, her dreams, and her fears, each word revealing a depth and vulnerability that surprised Jack. He found himself drawn to her story, her pain resonating with a part of him that he thought had long since hardened. As they rounded a bend, the headlights of the truck illuminated a small roadside diner, its neon sign flickering a beacon of warmth in the growing darkness. Jack suggested they stop for a bite to eat, his stomach rumbling in agreement. Maggie hesitated for a moment, her eyes darting nervously around the diner before agreeing. Inside, the air was thick with the aroma of coffee and greasy food. They slid into a booth by the window, the red vinyl creaking beneath them. Jack ordered 2 coffees and a slice of apple pie, his usual comfort food. Maggie, however, just stared out the window, her eyes fixated on something in the distance. Jack tried to engage her in conversation, but her gaze remained distant, her thoughts seemingly miles away. Suddenly she turned to Jack, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and urgency. She spoke of a premonition, a feeling that something terrible was about to happen. Jack, a man of logic and reason, tried to calm her fears, but deep down, a shiver ran down his spine. They left the diner, the night air noticeably cooler now, a chill wind whipping through the parking lot. As Jack started the engine, Maggie grabbed his arm, her fingers digging into his flesh, her eyes pleading. She begged him to turn around, to take her back the way they came. Jack, torn between his better judgment and the genuine terror in her eyes, hesitated. Our story takes us to the desolate backroads of the Midwest, where a young man named David embarked on a hitchhiking adventure that quickly turned into a terrifying fight for survival. David, armed with a backpack full of dreams, set off into the unknown, his thumb extended hopefully at every passing vehicle. A beat-up sedan, its paint faded, pulled over. David, his heart leaping with a mix of excitement and apprehension, approached cautiously. Behind the wheel sat a man who seemed to embody the word unassuming. David, relieved to have secured a ride, threw his backpack in the back and settled into the passenger seat. As they drove, the landscape whizzing by, David found himself drawn to Frank's quiet demeanor. There was a stillness about him, an air of suppressed intensity that both intrigued and unnerved David. As the miles ticked by, David noticed a shift in Frank's demeanor. He caught Frank staring at him in the rearview mirror, his eyes cold and calculating like a predator sizing up its prey. They stopped for gas at a desolate truck stop, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across the near-empty lot. David excused himself to use the restroom, his heart pounding in his chest. As he washed his hands, his reflection in the grimy mirror seemed to mock his growing fear. They drove through the night, the highway stretching before them like a dark, endless serpent. The silence in the car was deafening, punctuated only by the hum of the engine and the occasional sigh from Frank. Our final story takes us to the winding mountain roads of Colorado, where a seasoned hitchhiker named Maria encountered a driver who would lead her on a terrifying journey. Maria, a free spirit with a thirst for adventure, had traversed countless miles, her thumb a beacon of hope on lonely highways. She lived for the open road, the ever-changing scenery, and the thrill of the unknown. But on this particular day, a sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air. She stood at the edge of a desolate mountain pass as a sleek black car pulled over. Behind the wheel sat a man whose appearance exuded an air of wealth and power. He was impeccably dressed, his smile too perfect, his eyes too sharp. He introduced himself as Edward, his voice smooth as silk, and offered her a ride. Maria, usually cautious, felt an inexplicable pull towards him. She slid into the luxurious leather interior, the scent of expensive cologne filling her nostrils. As they climbed higher, the air grew colder, the trees closing in on either side of the road. Edward spoke little, but his silence was far from comforting. It was the silence of a predator, a hunter sizing up its prey. He would occasionally glance at Maria, his smile never reaching his eyes. The sun began its descent, casting long, eerie shadows across the winding road. Edward's demeanor shifted, his silence now laced with a palpable tension. He turned on the radio, the music classical, jarringly at odds with the growing sense of unease. Maria noticed his hands on the steering wheel, his knuckles white, his grip tight. His eyes darted nervously from the road to her, his smile gone, replaced by a look of cold calculation. He began to speak, his voice low and menacing, his words painting a picture of a world where darkness reigned. He spoke of ancient rituals, of sacrifices made to appease forgotten gods, his words sending chills down Maria's spine. She wanted to scream, to demand he let her out of the car, but fear had paralyzed her. She was trapped, her body frozen, her mind racing, desperate for a way out. The road grew steeper, the curves more treacherous. Edward's driving became erratic, his speed increasing with each passing mile. He laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the mountains as he swerved around a blind corner. Maria closed her eyes, her heart pounding in her chest, bracing for the impact that never came. When she opened her eyes, she realized they were no longer on the main road. They were on a narrow dirt track, barely wide enough for the car, that snaked its way deeper into the heart of the wilderness. Panic surged through Maria, her body trembling with a primal fear she had never known. Remember, sometimes the most terrifying stories are the ones that are true. The open road can be a dangerous place, and these stories serve as chilling reminders that not everyone who offers a helping hand is what they seem. Stay safe, and think twice before you pick up or become a hitchhiker. The thrill of adventure may be tempting, but it's always best to err on the side of caution when your safety is on the line. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel and support me on Patreon for more spine-chilling stories. And the next time you're on a lonely highway, remember these tales. Let them serve as a reminder that the road is as unpredictable as the souls who travel it.